Great, thanks. We'll start off with our next session is going to be on facilities and technologies. And we'll start off with a couple fast forward videos, just quick videos, and then we'll go into the short talks, and then we'll have a Q&A after.
We're an in-house multimedia team responsible for creating a lot of video content for online course offerings and some other stuff. We work for the Arizona State University W.P. Carey School of Business. In 2016, we adopted Penn State's One-Button Studio open source code and used their setup recommendations as a guide for creating our own self-serve green screen recording space. Our goal is to provide a straightforward recording space with weekend and evening availability that was user-friendly for the most novice users while still creating high-quality content output. The space itself has some simple customizations: electronic key card access, a reflect media screen that makes key samples consistent every time, a large television for on-screen presentations, and repurposed low-tech props on wheels for easy customization, and step-by-step signage and markers to help provide recording best practices. While footage coming out of the space can be used as is with a gray background, the magic really comes from the post-production template we've created. A huge thanks to Penn State for their initial work, the ACM SIGGRAPH Education Committee for allowing us to present, and of course, ASU W.P. Carey School of Business. Learn more about the 3D virtual set magic in my other presentation, and let me know if you're creating course content.
Hi, my name is Jushchyshyn, and I'm presenting the SIGGRAPH Virtual Production Wall we built here at Drexel University. We call it Scrappy because, well, it was built from scrap. The materials actually come to us from a 1990s era U.S. Army cave system. There was enough material for us to put together a 12-foot wide by 10-foot high wall, and we did purchase a pair of laser projectors to light it up. The cost of the two projectors plus the software that calibrates them is less than half the price of a similar single projector that would have similar resolution and brightness. So the software we use is called Scalable Desktop. It comes to us from Scalable Displays. It basically connects an SLR camera to our GPU computer and runs through a calibration process to line up the two projectors. The resulting calibration is baked onto the GPU, so when we run NDisplay, it's just running on a single monitor. Here's our mechanical lineup of these two projectors, and this is the resulting pixel overlap. With that, and our Vicon motion capture system already in place in the studio, we have a full virtual production wall. Hope this is of use. Thanks for watching. Looking forward to your questions.
Great, now we'll move into our short talks. We'll start with Andrew.
Okay, hi. Following the graphics gods, huh? So, and all these fantastic technologies. I feel unworthy, but I'll do my best. So, this kind of started off as, how much time do I have, by the way?
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, geez, that's really fast. So this started off with this computer that I was walking by out of my bandmate's house, and he had this old thing sitting around. So this was the Tyan S7002. I'll tell you what this is in a second. But I also wanted to give a shout out to SIGGRAPH following Don and say thanks for SIGGRAPH basically being there, and also being computer graphics and interactive techniques, which is what got me this course back in 2000. So I've always been doing eye tracking ever since then. So the Tyan is this this box was sitting there in my guitar player's house, and I said, "Can I have it?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "It's got great fans." You know, it's from 2009. So this is a little bit of, to follow on Don's, a little bit of everything old is new again kind of thing. I got this thing. He had this nice power supply that we added in there, 650 watts, I think, and just had no GPU. But I mean, what can you do when you have no money, right? So I was kind of broke. So all I needed was a GPU. And last semester, due to the chip shortages, you can't get these things anywhere. So I found one on eBay, and luckily the university helped offset the cost here. So I got this 3080, shoved it in there. And I had these components from before, the Vive Pro Eye and the HoloLens. And just also to mention how things have changed in 20 years. Back then, in 2000, I had a custom built eye tracker inside an HMD, which cost me $60,000. And it took the guy about 3 months or six months to build. It was all brand new. Now you can pick up an HTC Vive Pro Eye with a built-in eye tracker for about $1,400. Which is fantastic. The HoloLens 2 also has an eye tracker built in, which is great for me. So Did it work? Was I able to resurrect this thing? There it is, the beast at the bottom left. Yes, it's a fully operational battle station. I even found this old subwoofer and speaker system in some old, closet, and I pulled it out, stuck it in there. I even it didn't have a webcam, so I had to put in a 1394 card to get an old point gray camera working and a USB mic. But little things like that help you build, and so that sort of gave me the impetus to apply for NVIDIA's academic hardware grant, which I won, and so it is now a gaze sensing in XR lab. I got the grant, I got the machines, the cards, but I still have to find tables, which is actually very hard to do at my university. Getting furniture, believe it or not, because I have no operating budget at present. But I did teach a course 881 on gaze sensing in XR, and here's just this will look totally basic, right? But on the HoloLens, so it'll look like nothing, but it is showing gaze in augmented reality, using it to move blocks around. It's just basically a Microsoft demo, but to me, it was just marvelous that it actually worked, and the students got way more done than this. This was just took them a couple of weeks to do this, but now they're actually investigating perception of a virtual human, a digital twin, but as you can get in AR and in VR. So this is where we are, and that's about it. So this is kind of like a machine that was on its way to surplus. I grabbed it, put in a graphics card, built up this lab, essentially stole this office, which is valuable property on university campuses, right? And started a class and won an NVIDIA hardware grant. So small things lead to great things. What is it? Acorns build great oaks. So hopefully this lab, once I'm done with it, will lead to great research. Here's what it looks like at the moment, but I actually have the four machines and 4 stations with 4 HTC Vives and 2 HoloLenses that I intend on building further. So there you go. I think that's my time.
Great, thank you. We'll turn it over to Mark to tell us about it.
Hello. Thank you all very much for all of the wonderful stuff so far. Hopefully I'll keep that rolling. One of the things that I'm talking about today is how I did virtual production, or how I'm currently doing virtual production on a small scale here. And so I started out with the idea that I wanted to do basically like a Mandalorian volume, but at cheaper prices, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to get the full volume. So what could I do to kind of fix that? And so I came up with this idea of placing a screen on a rod, basically, and then putting the Oculus controller at the end of it. Oops, there we go. Putting an Oculus controller at the end, and then also putting, it says virtual camera, but actually an actual camera facing the character. Then we can swing it around and get the volume. Super low budget. And I just created this little proof of concept. Now my video wasn't working, so now it's going to work today. So this is my kids kind of demonstrating this proof of concept. I took an old monitor and attached it to a piece of board with some scrap materials that I had. I have my DSLR, and you can see kind of at the tip the Oculus hand controller there. And as she swings around, you can see that the background is also moving. And just to see what that looks like from the camera view, this is what we kind of get. So the stormtrooper here in the middle is not moving, and this is just the camera moving around with the screen. You can see there's some issues of light placement, and that would end up being an issue. So I had this idea, and then we ended up getting a big wall at RIT, and we ended up doing a full virtual production commercial shot about electric vehicles and electric motorcycles. And that was going along great. And I thought, okay, great. Now I can actually work on the wall. But then they needed to have the walls returned. They were just on loan for a little bit. So then I was back to, okay, what am I going to do to help keep my virtual production moving? And so I got a team together, Jen, Tom, Tim, and Emily. Tim and Emily work at Optic Sky. They're with the company that I was helping to make that virtual production beforehand. Tom is a stop motion animator, and Jen works with Arduinos. And so in just kind of putting that idea aside first, I wanted to make sure that I could get the kind of smaller scale virtual production stuff going. So I ended up getting a 55-inch TV, and we also got a motion control rig from Ditto Gear. And so my plan is to do a virtual stop motion in our basement there. I have a digital Wally. This is actually the digital version of this Lego Wally. I want to test brick calibration, or color. Talking about digital twins, I want to be able to have the real Wally and a virtual Wally be able to be kind of occupying the same space in real time, and not have it be noticed that they're one's real and one's not. I also want to demonstrate the stop motion process, and also use this as an opportunity to learn how to animate in Unreal. But I started rigging the Wally in Unreal using the control rig. It's relatively new for Unreal. Usually you animate in Maya and then export it out to Unreal, but now with the control rig, I want to be able to animate directly in Unreal. And then I was having some problems with the wheels tracking, so Tim helped me out with this. So now you can see that this track is moving faster, and the other one is moving slower. So all I have to do is just move it through the screen, move it through the scene, and it will just animate the way that it's supposed to go. We have our storyboards. Essentially, the story of it is going to be two Wallies coming in virtual and real, and they kind of do like a mirror routine. And then one travels off, says goodbye, and the other one is kind of left there stunned and then travels off. And then we pull back to see how much, or actually how little space we used. In stop motion, generally you have to build out huge sets, and you have to build a lot of props for the stop motion. And what I'm hoping to be able to do is just to use a small little space. We have about this much space, and this is the size of the TV there that we're using. Right now, the camera is not on the track, but this is a comparison of my digital Wally versus the real Wally. And this is just putting a little bit of blur onto the camera, and it takes out some of that moire pattern that you typically see. This is some color matching. So this is a real Wally, or this is a real Lego brick, and this is the color of the virtual Lego brick. So just matching those up. And then for some test animations, I had Tom do this animation at the bottom, and then I replicated that same animation at the top, and we get that. And then the coloring, I haven't finished doing the coloring yet, and we're probably going to move this into Unreal 5, so to try and get a better version of that. So we did, after about 3 months, finally get the Ditto gear. I did run into the problem that I found out that they have two controllers. There's an Evolution controller, which is more expensive, and you can use it. We wanted to use it for both live action and stop motion, but it doesn't work with Dragon Frame, which is used for stop motion. So if anybody's planning on using Ditto gear, I would probably recommend them not, because it's very the support is horrible. Where do I go next? Basically, we need to finish doing the materials. We need to test the monitors for real world and the fake. We need to connect the control rig. I got to find out a way to connect that now to our rig and make the film. And then we're going to work with Department D to help implement this into a real world scenario of actually getting them into production in virtual animation. And if you have any questions, that's me. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. So we'll open up to questions from the audience. I guess I'll start off. It sounds like everybody is working with limited budgets, right? And sort of trying to find the resources that you need. Is there any advice, or where did you find the money, or how did you go about sort of, you know, getting your funding for a lot of these projects, or for moving it forward, right? What are you looking for?
I can comment. To me, it's kind of like a bootstrapping issue. How do you get started? And I'm hoping that this lab will lead to further funding, and it'll snowball. And so to start, you have to, I don't know, sometimes maybe just scrounge around, put things together, build it up a little bit, maybe some, you know, advertising. I put that, getting that NVIDIA icon on the door sign was actually a feat in and of itself, because there are apparently rules and regulations here at my university, and you have to get this approved by some signage person that actually looks at the number of characters and so forth. So I think yeah, get something to start with and then build on top of that, and I think hopefully things will snowball.
And for me, I was fortunate enough to be on part of the EPIC Mega Grant writing committee that we had at RIT. Sean Foster, who's also here, was very active in the Unreal community, and so, you know, we all together got a grant for RIT, and that was part of my money that I received from that was for that. So, but I mean, the my initial kind of DIY demo that I did, I mean, that was just stuff I had laying around in my basement, and really, I mean, literally duct taping stuff to wood panels. So a lot of times, I think, you know, getting a concept and being able to show it, whether it be a real physical world and or even a virtual model. There are many other slides that I could show, but one of the things that I had created was a couple different 3D mock-ups of what I was thinking. And I think if you can find a way to really have people see what your idea is, and not just you know, maybe write a proposal, but actually show them and point them to something that they can either, you know, play a video or you know, handle in VR. It's relatively cheap today, so that can go a long way to having somebody buy into your ideas.
Great, thank you. Anie, next.
You want to go, Anie?
Same. I actually had some technical difficulty just a moment ago, so I was only able to just reconnect. I'm so sorry.
So the question, Annie, is where did you get the funding for the really cool push button studio?
Oh, goodness. Well, we had to do a lot of research ahead of time, and then eventually we got funding for the major equipment we had to purchase, but we ended up reusing like our microphone and remote lighting switches from a different project that had already been scrapped. The big ticket item we had to get funding for was the Reflect Media screen, and we did a proof of concept in that, like, the original Penn State model had used a projector, and so we found a TV that wasn't being used in one of the classrooms and brought it in and said, okay, if we use the Reflect Media, this will actually work better because we'll have greater saturation for color. And then we were able to secure the funding, which I think for that screen was like $18,000. So it was quite a large amount because of the size of the screen.
That's really cool, though. Yeah, for myself, I'm going to echo Mark, and I think Don mentioned it earlier that sometimes it's just getting something visualized. I think Don mentioned just not even using digital, just drawing things. And the last couple grants that I've gotten have actually been visualized with nothing more than pen and ink, and they've been able to land some funding. In the case of this virtual production wall, it was a little bit of if you build it, they will come. So I just kind of built the screen at one point and said, if we had projectors, this would actually work. And so that, in comparing the price of a pair of projectors versus a full LED wall, new, not to mention all the electrical upgrades that would have been necessary to run a wall of that size, it became a little bit of a no-brainer, because they knew that no matter what, the projectors would get some kind of use. And that's another advantage. And I think I see that as a bit of a running theme for all of us here in the panel, is that, we're repurposing existing gear, and we're also, even when we're acquiring new gear, it's gear that could be used for multiple roles. It's not like anything that was put into any one of these projects couldn't be used some other way down the road. None of it is specifically bespoke, other than maybe, Mark's 2x4 holding the camera and screen together, which I think is the most phenomenal thing I have ever seen. I am like dying to, it's too bad 2x4s have gotten so expensive these days, but I just love that idea. And I think there's a lot of us out there in education these days that are just scrounging around, looking at piles of what is here. And if I could just add this one more thing that, if it doesn't work, we can use it another way, but we could really make something special here. And so it's really great to see that across the board here. Mark, I'm curious as to what led to that idea of strapping a screen on the end of a long stick.
Yeah, I'm a runner, and so you have a lot of time to think. And at the time, it was I had just finished watching The Mandalorian, and I was like, man, I finally get and understand it. That was my first, just peer into it. I'm like, how can I create and make that thing, usable? And so then I came up with a bunch of different ideas, and I saw that one of the questions here was if there's still consideration for that development, and yes, there is. Like I said, I had a bunch of iterations of what I wanted to do, but then I wanted to then just kind of pare it down first and see if I could get it working, but a couple different ideas that I have was to mount like a camera, just a rod off of the top of the monitor, and then down to a camera, and then have a bunch of servos that would be able to detect where the camera is. And that was one of the biggest things, is really trying to on the cheap and relatively accurately determine where the camera is. So I had that idea. And then the other idea that I have is to take a robot arm. And we have, we're fortunate enough at RIT that there is a robotics division here. And so or at least a department that has robot arms that aren't being used yet. So after I get done with this project, my next idea is to then put the screen onto a robotic arm, and then have the camera get tracked as well as the robot arm, and see how much I can do with that. We did have the fortune for a day to have one of the Bolt robot arms, and so we were going to kind of work on that, but we couldn't get it working with Unreal, unfortunately, and then they had to pull ties and bolt. So no pun. But yes, there are still ideas, a lot of ideas to do with that.
With using projectors for the virtual backdrops, do you run into the same issues as far as pixel density with the monitors, or do you have to worry about that, or can you get much closer to the screens?
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit less opportunity for moire with the projectors because the pixels do blend with one another a bit more. It also depends on how well you focus the projectors. You can, Dave showed blurring the camera a little bit, and in the projection setup, you could just defocus the projectors just a little bit. We actually tried to get as sharp focus as possible. I think we're 1920 pixels across 12 feet. And so that does get us actually a little under 2 millimeters per pixel. So it's very comparable actually to LED walls that are used these days. And the other really big trick though is to make sure that, for us anyway, was to make sure that the camera and the GPU that was driving the projectors were being synchronized with a Genlock generators. So we use these really tiny, they're rather inexpensive, just a few $100s each, something called an UltraSync 1. And they have digital wireless synchronization between the different units. And so we could have one on the camera and it didn't impose any additional cabling for the camera side. And then we have a slave wireless one connected to the sync board in the GPU. And so that way the GPU is telling the projector what to do. So the GPU fires in sync with the shutter on the camera, and therefore the projectors are, basically putting their frames up in sync with the camera. And so then we don't get any of that strobing effect. I think one of my videos had a strobing effect, but that was a result of using my cell phone to actually just film a monitor. Those two things really help. So I think, the two folks that we were working with there, Ian Fursa and Steve Chandler, do quite a bit of LED wall work. They happen to be in Philadelphia. And so we kind of brought them in as let's experiment with this thing. You guys are real experts in this. And they actually commented that the projection actually turned out to be a bit easier in terms of the pixel moire patterns and such than they were typically used to with the LED walls. It had its other challenges there though, but it all worked out.
Right. Other questions?
I have a question for Anie. And that was, how much use does your push button studio see that, in terms of folks like walking in, new teachers using it, and, are there any hurdles that come up, or is that whole layout with all those signs, does everyone read the manual, the instructions, and does it always work?
Great question. The answer is no, they definitely do not read the signs all the time. But so the big hurdle we found is that we created a Google Calendar, and we had to restrict it so that basically we created a form that they had to fill out before an appointment gets added to that calendar, because if they add it themselves, then they just show up and use it. If you're a recurring user, like you've gone in there several times, you know how to do the process. The first time users, we mandate a tour. We do an orientation to say, like, this is how to use the space and the best practices for recording. But primarily that's just to make editing easier for us, so that when we get the footage, it's in a way that, like, they've added a pause at the beginning and at the end for us to give a clean edit. But yeah, we see actually, so we have a summer session that's starting today. The course opens and then it starts on Monday actually. And we have about 5 brand new faculty this week alone come in to use the studio space. So yeah, we're turning out a lot of video out of there, and it's booked, I would say the 2 weeks preceding a semester, almost 24/7.
And how do you handle all the editing?
So we do have an internal team. The 4 people in our video, they are all editing video and doing, like, I'm more of a graphics person, so I handle a lot of the lower thirds, backgrounds, virtual sets and things, but all of us will dive in on editing as needed.
So my question for Andrew is, how are you going to get all the desks you need for those machines?
I don't know yet, but our IT guys said they put in some kind of request to the upper ups, and I don't know, it's been months, so I have no idea. But then they said, oh, maybe there's some, those picnic type table things with the drop down legs, whatever. I have no more money, so maybe we'll just have everybody on bean bags on the floor or something. I have no idea.
We ran into a similar problem. We ended up we couldn't get a mounting for our button actually in our one button studio, and we ended up like using gaffer's tape and creating a mounting system on the wall. So beanbags it is, right?
We actually, in our college, had a room that did have beanbag seating, and it was kind of like stadium tiered floor levels, and it was just big cushions that folks would sit on. And it didn't take too many cycles of this brand new building with all this, great architecture and all to realize that, your back gets sore sitting on these things, for an entire lecture. And so we made the request, and we got proper folding seats and with tables and all put in. But when that happened, they said, oh, well, if you're installing installed seats, then you need a railing. And so we walked in when they said, okay, it's all finished. Congratulations, you got the seats you asked for. And then there was a railing, and you would sit down in the seat, and the railing was exactly at eye height. So that was a whole nother little battle. But it seems sometimes that working through penetrating the bureaucracy, as they say in Pixar, is a continual challenge for us as educators.
And we got a little bit of what's next, like with Mark, but and Andrew, what's next for the push button and for the projector thing?
Well, I'll weigh in on that. Is I think we're at capacity, I think, in terms of booking the studio, but we have had some requests to do something similar to Lightboard, if any of you are familiar with that. It's kind of like a whiteboard that has it's reversed so that you can see the person writing it, and it's lit up in like they have an LED light that's lighting the panel, and it's transparent. We're still working on proof of concept for ourselves and finding space. It's such a big problem right now, as there's just no more classrooms or anything that we can just sneak into with the adequate space for like the distance to the camera and such. But yeah, there's demand.
That's an issue with everyone finding space.
Yeah, and for the projection, it's we're looking towards rolling it out in full quarter semester standardized classes. So I first had it operational at last year's SIGGRAPH, and we kind of showed it off as our virtual SIGGRAPH booth for last year's August conference. And it's been going through a shakedown. There've been a few really tenacious students who have worked with me on some independent study projects to really kind of give it a good shakedown and make sure it worked. And we got to the point where we felt like we were safe inviting some outside collaborators and working with them. And part of that was us being able to show off the gear, and part of it was what happens if we put this in the hands of experts that have been working in this space, and does it work for them? And that shoot went extremely well. And so our next step is to really have a fully codified course that uses this on a recurring basis. And also at our college, the department that does computer graphics is digital media, and it's a separate department from the cinema and television department that really has all of the skill and background and equipment for doing genuine cinematic production. And we really defer to that department as being the experts in cinematography and the experts in proper lighting and, screenwriting, writing a good plot, all of those kinds of things really reside in that department. So we're really looking to increase the amount of collaboration we do with those students and faculty. So we're likely going to be running cross-disciplinary courses that attract students from both sides, both departments, and get them involved in working together as these technologies collide in industry. We want them to collide in our academic setting as well.
That's a good sort of question for maybe Andrew and Mark, as far as like how are your pieces worked into your curriculum?
So I'll jump in on this one. I know from past, let's say, NSF grant proposal writing experience, sometimes NSF reviewers like to see pedagogical component. Plus, really, I never had any time myself to get in there and do VR or AR programs, so I actually started a course the very semester with that one machine on gaze sensing and XR, and I had let's see how many students showed up. So I had like 6 groups working on various things that were in there. Some of them were using a mobile eye tracker. One guy built an escape room in VR that you had to, look at things. He built a Ouija board that you can use to eye type with. So yeah, I basically just came up with this course. And the weird thing is, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but in 25 years of teaching, this was the one class I was totally unprepared for. And I just said to the students, look, here's some equipment, do something cool. Now it's a grad level course, so they're self-motivated, but that's kind of what happened. And what I'm doing now is chasing after them to give me videos so that I can stick on the webpage, so I can attract more students next year, and they'll continue with that. So that's what I mean by trying to snowball this thing. So yes, there was a course component that I just started up this semester, and it ran the first time through.
For me, I'm one of those people that just kind of like jump into things and not really have necessarily a plan or like forward thinking on these things. But I find these cool things and I want to just get into them and break things and make things happen. But we have a stop motion. We have stop motion classes at RIT, and I thought that this is going to be a huge game changer for stop motion, and there's not as far as I know anybody else actually looking into doing virtual production for stop motion, at least that not that I have found. If anybody finds it, I would love to see some examples of what they've done. I think there is one place, but they weren't using Unreal, they were using Unity to do it. So my plan is to be able to hand this off and maybe have more collaboration between our 3D students and our stop motion students, where the stop motion students can work on the smaller bits of that, and then have the 3D students work on some of the background stuff that would then translate into working on the larger wall as well. So they can kind of go between both of those areas. I also teach advanced modeling, and I'll have stop motion students in there and have them do 3D printing and then use that in their stop motion. So I don't teach stop motion, but I'm in their mix. And the other thing that I would like to do is right now we have animation 1 and 2 for 3D. And then they go off and start making films, but I'd like to have a animation 3 where we start getting into more advanced animation techniques of doing stop motion, rigging in Unreal, stop motion, mocap, and getting into all of the extra kind of things that aren't being taught right now. So my plan, once I get my tenure, fingers crossed, that I'll be able to take on that next class of animation 3 and push those students to working in animation in virtual production a bit more. This past fall, I was, as you saw, I was learning control rig in Unreal, and so I just had a 2-hour kind of workshop showing students how I was able to get characters from Maya to Unreal and then start rigging them. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Great, thank you. Nick, there was a question in the chat about sort of evolution in the project for virtual production.
Yeah, actually, so it looks like Nikhil had asked about the projection technology itself. And it's kind of interesting, the original cave system that came to us from the Army had used these massive, I mean, just huge Christie Roadster 2000 projectors. And I remember like getting this stuff out of the storage unit and being so excited, like, look, these are Christie projectors. How come nobody's using these? And then like the disappointment, the heart's just sinking. You turn this thing on and the fans kick in and the lamp warms up over time, and you get something that's a third of the brightness of something that you can buy, something for a couple of $100s from Amazon these days that just far outclasses these Christie Roadster 2000s. Of course, we're not quite at the same level of Moore's law when it comes to projection and optics versus computational power, but there's definitely a multi-generational difference here. And so, I don't even know. I'd have to do some sleuthing to figure out just how expensive those projectors were originally when they were purchased in the 1990s. But I know it was really, really high. And, with today, you can very inexpensively get a laser projector. And so we got 2 Canon laser projectors, and there's no lamp warm up. I mean, you turn it on and it's on, and the color and intensity is consistent throughout the day. You can run it throughout the day. It's like that transition from tungsten lights to LED lights. All of a sudden, the entire studio runs cooler and uses less electricity. The projectors are much more modular as well. So when we chose the projector, we were able to choose a wide angle lens, a short throw lens. So it's essentially 1-to-1. So for every foot the screen is away from the projector, that's another foot horizontally we get in the projection. So all of those factors really set us up for a situation that will work out well. We have one more piece of antique technology to add into the mix, and that is that the cave systems were actually equipped with front surface aluminum oxide reflecting mirrors. So we have 3 or 4 of these really huge, they're like 4 or 5 feet wide mirrors that the light from the projector hits the aluminum oxide on the reflection surface. It doesn't even go through glass. And so there's a maximum retention of luminance with these, and that should be able to give us like an extra 4 feet of space. Right now we've been doing direct projection, but if we can get the mirrors placed in just the right way, we're, fingers crossed, going to get another 4 feet, 12 feet across back for space in front of the screen. That is one of the drawbacks of projection, is that again, even with the short throw lens, we lose a foot of studio space behind the screen for every foot that we want it to be projected wide. So so it's fun to actually have that, the modern technology of laser projectors and a nice GPU and all projecting onto this 30-year-old screen and just doing something that's now the cutting edge in industry and getting students working with that at full scale. So yeah, I think that addresses that question.
Any other questions from the panel or in the chat? We've got about 5 minutes left until the normal break time, but we did run a little long last time. We want to take a little longer this time.
Well, great. Thanks for hosting us, Rick. This was really cool. This is a great
Thanks.
group.
Yeah. And
Yeah, thank you very much.
please, I know some were interested in any of the info about your projects, right? You can submit links in the chat or presentations after the fact, like anything that you're willing to share would be awesome.
Yeah, thank you for leading the session, Rick. I appreciate all the questions.
Yeah, ditto. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick. It was great sharing the panel with you, Andrew, Mark, and Annie. Annie, thank you for going literally the extra mile to join. Actually, the extra, 3,000 miles? Well, maybe it's not quite 3,000 miles for you, right?
Maybe 1,000.
Maybe 1,000. I was picturing you on East Coast, but that's right. You're a little further west than that. But it's yeah, this was a lot of fun. So thanks for playing along, everybody.